The desolate inheritance. The gravel road, narrow and overgrown, ended abruptly at a pair of rusted iron gates. They were tall, elaborate, almost mocking in their decrepit grandeur, clearly designed to keep something out, or perhaps keep something in. My old sedan, packed to the gills with what remained of my life, shuddered to a halt. I cut the engine. The sudden silence was thick, pressing down from the towering firs that lined the drive, swallowing the distant hum of the highway I'd left hours ago. This was it. Blackwood Manor. My great-aunt Elara's legacy. My new beginning, I hoped. I pushed one of the gates open, the hinges groaning like an old man waking. It dragged a furrow through the damp earth, a sound that grated on my teeth. The drive beyond was a tunnel of ancient evergreens, their branches laced so tightly overhead that only slivers of gray sky pierced through. The air grew colder as I drove deeper, carrying the scent of wet earth, pine needles, and something else. Something faintly sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit or decaying flowers. It was a smell I couldn't quite place, but it felt wrong, unnatural. Then the trees parted, and Blackwood Manor rose from the gloom. It wasn't just a house. It was a fortress of dark stone and warped timber, sprawling across a plateau overlooking what must have been Elara's infamous gardens. 3 stories high, with a jagged roofline punctuated by countless gables and chimneys, it looked less like a home and more like a sleeping beast. The sheer scale of it stole my breath. It was beautiful, in a decaying, haunted sort of way, and utterly overwhelming. A fresh start? I parked the car, the crunch of gravel beneath my tires echoing unnaturally loud in the vast quiet. My gaze swept over the grounds. What had once been meticulously curated gardens were now a riot of unchecked growth. A verdant wilderness where thorny vines clawed their way up stone walls and monstrous rhododendrons bloomed in chaotic profusion. Elara had been a botanist, a recluse, known for her peculiar tastes. Looking at this tangled dominion, I could see why. It wasn't just overgrown, it was wild, a living, breathing thing threatening to reclaim the manor itself. Dust motes danced in the sparse shafts of light filtering through grimy stained glass panels. It was stronger in here, almost sickly. "Hello?" I called out, my voice swallowed immediately by the vastness. No reply, of course. Elara was gone. The solicitor had made that clear. Her death had been sudden, unexpected, and utterly without explanation, beyond a vague mention of natural causes. I still hadn't processed it, hadn't processed anything much since the tragedy that had driven me here. Blackwood Manor was supposed to be a refuge, a place to heal, to simply be. But standing in its echoing hall, I felt a prickle of unease that had nothing to do with grief. I dragged my suitcase inside, the wheels rumbling loudly on the marble floor. Each room was a time capsule of Elara's eccentric life. Libraries filled with leather-bound books on arcane botany and forgotten languages, their pages yellowed and brittle. Drawing rooms draped in heavy velvet, smelling faintly of potpourri and mildew. Every surface was coated in a fine layer of dust, yet the house didn't feel abandoned. It felt dormant. In the cavernous kitchen, copper pots hung from a wrought iron rack, gleam dulled by time. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the stone floor beneath my feet. I pressed my palm against a cold stone wall, feeling it faintly pulse. Just the house settling, I told myself, a relic protesting its age. I wandered aimlessly for a while, my unease growing with each silent, dusty room. The windows, thick with grime, offered glimpses of the encroaching gardens, now appearing even more menacing in the fading light. It looked almost alive. I knelt, touching it. It felt slick, cool, and surprisingly firm. My exploration led me down a narrow, winding staircase, clearly servants' quarters from a bygone era. The air grew heavier, cooler, and the faint thrumming I'd felt earlier intensified. It was a mechanical hum, low and steady, a sound that seemed utterly out of place in this ancient, silent house. It drew me forward, a strange beacon in the encroaching gloom. I pushed open a heavy wooden door at the bottom of the stairs. Inside, the sound bloomed. It was the laundry room with humming machines. 2 enormous, industrial-looking washers and a dryer, relics from another century, stood against one wall. Their metal bodies were pitted with rust, their dials frozen. Yet, they hummed. A deep, resonant vibration that I could feel in my chest, a low, rhythmic pulse that seemed to permeate the very stone and mortar around me. It wasn't the hum of functioning machinery. It was deeper, more organic, like the sustained note of some massive, unseen instrument. I stared at the dormant machines, a shiver tracing its way up my spine. They shouldn't be humming. There was no power connected to them, no sign of life. The air in the laundry room was thick with that cloying, sweet decay smell, stronger here than anywhere else. It was almost suffocating. My eyes scanned the room, searching for a source, a reason. There was nothing, just the machines, the concrete floor, and a faint swirling mist that seemed to cling to the furthest corner, too diffuse to be smoke, too unnatural to be mere dust. I backed away slowly, the hum seeming to follow me, to press against the back of my skull. This wasn't just an old house. It was something else. Something alive. But I was here now, and a stubborn, determined part of me refused to be easily chased away. Not yet. The rusted iron gates groaned, a sound like a dying beast as I wrestled them open. They resisted, stubbornly clinging to decades of disuse. But I pushed, my determination fueled by the biting chill of the Pacific Northwest air. Blackwood Manor loomed ahead, a silhouette against a bruised sky. It was larger than the photos suggested, a hulking mass of dark timber and stained glass, its gables sharp as broken teeth. A sense of weary grandeur clung to it, like a shroud. I took a deep breath, the air smelling of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else. Something faintly metallic, like old pennies left in a wet garden. Unpacking was a chore, each box a reminder of the life I'd left behind. Dust motes danced in the anemic light filtering through tall, grimy windows as I hauled my meager belongings into the cavernous foyer. Just an old house, I muttered to myself, the words swallowed by the vast space. I chose a bedroom on the second floor, one with a serviceable mattress and a window overlooking a tangle of neglected rose bushes. The first night was a restless blur. Every creak, every distant thump from the floors above or below pulled me from the edge of sleep. They weren't words, not exactly, but a murmur that suggested language, a collective sighing that seemed to come from the very walls. I pulled the heavy wool blankets tighter, wishing for dawn. The next morning, I decided to explore. I needed to find a functional space, maybe even the laundry room with humming machines my great-aunt's solicitor had mentioned in passing as being surprisingly modern. I wandered through dusty drawing rooms draped in white sheets, past libraries filled with moldering books, and a vast dining hall where a single dead fly lay enshrined on a polished mahogany table. I found a narrow, winding corridor tucked behind the main staircase, almost hidden by a tapestry depicting a hunting scene. At the end of the passage, a heavy oak door studded with oxidized brass stood slightly ajar. A faint greenish glow emanated from within. Curiosity, or perhaps a morbid fascination, pulled me forward. I pushed the door open fully and stepped into Elara's conservatory. It was immense, a cathedral of glass and steel, but utterly consumed. Not by dust or decay, but by life. A life-run riot. Monstrous ferns unfurled fronds like grasping hands, their undersides a sickly yellow. Vines, thick as my arm, coiled around the structural beams. their tendrils snaking across the glass panels, obscuring the outside world entirely. The plants weren't just growing, they were thriving in a way that felt unnatural. Their leaves pulsed with an inner verdant light, and I could swear I saw the faintest, almost imperceptible twitch in a thick, fleshy stalk that snaked across the floor. They grew in bizarre, intricate patterns, forming arches and tunnels, creating a living labyrinth within the glass walls. It wasn't words I understood, but a chorus of soft, yearning sounds, like a multitude of tiny mouths breathing in unison. The sound seemed to resonate in my chest, a low thrumming that was both unsettling and strangely compelling. A large, gnarled root, impossibly thick, protruded from a crack in the stone floor, weaving its way under a cluster of glowing fungi before disappearing into a wall of dense foliage. Then I heard it clearly. I spun around, my heart giving a violent lurch against my ribs. Nothing. Just the endless, breathing green. But the air around me felt suddenly charged, heavy with an unseen presence. My skin prickled. I stumbled backward, the strange, sweet scent suddenly suffocating. This wasn't just an overgrown garden. This was something else entirely. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Elara wasn't just tending a garden, he was tending something else. And whatever it was still here. It was alive. And it was listening. I found the laundry room with humming machines eventually, tucked away in a surprisingly clean corner of the basement, past a pantry stacked with dusty, unlabeled jars. The machines hummed with a reassuring mechanical drone, a stark contrast to the organic symphony of the conservatory. I threw a load of my clothes in, the mundane task a desperate attempt to ground myself. It felt like the house itself was breathing, and I was just a new, unwelcome guest in its vast, living lungs. I finally pulled it through, the tires crunching on the gravel path that snaked towards Blackwood Manor. The house loomed, a hulking silhouette against the bruised sky, its windows like vacant eyes. I spent the first few hours just moving boxes, the thud of each carton echoing in the vast, empty spaces. The silence was profound, broken only by my own footsteps and the occasional creak of the ancient timber settling. A persistent, low thrum eventually drew me deeper into the house, away from the main living areas. It wasn't a comforting sound, but rather a mechanical drone that felt out of place in such a decaying structure. I followed the noise through a labyrinth of service corridors, past pantries filled with forgotten dust-shrouded jars, until I found myself in the laundry room with humming machines. 2 industrial-sized washing machines and a dryer, surprisingly modern in appearance, churned away, their rhythmic vibrations resonating through the concrete floor. Had someone been here recently? The thought was unsettling, an intrusion on my sense of isolated control. But no. The house was too neglected, too quiet for recent habitation. Perhaps a timer, a final act of a fastidious owner. I dismissed it, the drone of the machines a temporary anchor in the strangeness. My true destination, though, called to me with a far more potent, almost physical pull. The conservatory. Elara's obsession, the heart of her botanical mysteries. It was a sprawling glass structure attached to the rear of the manor, a colossal greenhouse that stretched like a verdant appendage into the gloom of the surrounding woods. The door to the conservatory was a heavy, arched affair of wrought iron and clouded glass, cool to my touch. It was the smell of decomposition and vibrant growth, inextricably intertwined. Stepping inside was like entering another world entirely. Towering plants, unlike anything I had ever seen, clawed towards the distant glass ceiling. Their leaves were impossibly broad, some a deep, bruised purple, others a sickly phosphorescent green. They pulsed faintly, I swore, with an internal, viscous liquid. The air was a hazy soup, shimmering with moisture. Drops of condensation clung to the glass panes, distorting the already dim light filtering in from outside, making the entire structure feel submerged. It wasn't the chirping of insects or the song of birds. It was a deeper, more primal sound, like something stirring just beneath the surface of the earth itself. In one such alcove, tucked away beneath a monstrous plant with leaves like open, grasping hands, I found it. A small, sturdy oak desk, warped by humidity but still intact. On its surface, amidst a scattering of dried petals and what looked like brittle, segmented seed pods, lay a stack of leather-bound journals. Their covers were cracked and faded, but the gold embossing on the spines, though tarnished, still proclaimed them to be Elara's. Its pages were brittle, filled with Elara's precise, elegant script. Her early entries were meticulous botanical observations, diagrams of growth patterns, notes on soil composition. But as I flipped further, the tone shifted. The handwriting became more frantic, the margins filled with hurried annotations. August 14th, I read aloud, my voice feeling thin in the verdant expanse. The new specimens thrive. Their resilience is remarkable. A pulsing sensation, faint yet undeniable, emanates from the deepest roots. My gaze swept across the tangle of roots around me, an involuntary shiver tracing its way down my spine. I turned another page. September 2nd. The growth expands. It hungers. Not for light, not for water, but for something else. I've begun feeding it. Small sacrifices. My breath hitched. Small sacrifices? The words hung in the humid air, heavy and unsettling. I flipped faster, my fingers trembling slightly. The entries grew more erratic, less scientific, more obsessive. October 19th. The root is sentient. It communicates. Not with words, but with a deep, resonating hum. Or was it just my imagination, spurred by Elara's words? My eyes darted to the colossal plant overhead, its purple leaves seeming to unfurl just a fraction more as if listening. November 5th. It demands more. The growth is beautiful, consuming everything in its path. I am merely a conduit. Its host. Host. Elara hadn't just been tending a garden. He had been cultivating something monstrous, something that saw her as a vessel. The sheer scale of the conservatory, the unnatural vibrancy of the plants, the pervasive, sweet, bitter smell. It all coalesced into a suffocating understanding. Blackwood Manor wasn't just a house with strange plants. It was a root system, and I, Blake, had just walked right into its heart. Host. The word still clung to me, a damp, cold film over my skin, even as I left the oppressive humidity of the conservatory. The sweet, bitter perfume of Elara's plants, once merely unsettling, now felt like the breath of something predatory. I pulled the heavy oak door shut, the latch clicking with a hollow finality that echoed through the silent mansion. It wasn't just a garden Elara had tended. It was a prison, a larder, a nursery for something that needed a living vessel. And I was here now, alone, in its heart. I tried to focus on the practical, the mundane. I pulled out my phone. One bar, then none. I tried the landline in the study. Dead. I shook my head, a growing unease coiling in my gut. The storm had been bad, but this felt deliberate. I went to the window, peering out into the twilight. The dense forest pressed in, a wall of ancient gnarled trees, their branches clawing at the gray sky. The gravel path leading back to the main road was barely visible, already disappearing under encroaching foliage. My clothes from the journey were still in my bag, smelling faintly of travel and stale air. I decided to make my way to the laundry room, a task simple enough to ground me. As I navigated the labyrinthine corridors, a strange sensation began to prickle the back of my neck. It was the feeling of being watched, a weightless, pervasive gaze that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. I spun around once, twice, but there was only the aged wallpaper, the looming portraits of Elara's ancestors, their painted eyes seeming to follow my movements. I pushed through a swinging door and found the laundry room with humming machines. The rhythmic thrum of the ancient washing machine and dryer, a low, persistent drone, was almost a comfort in its mechanical predictability. I dumped my clothes into the washer, poured in the detergent, and pushed the start button. The machine groaned to life, water sloshing. I leaned against the dryer, trying to steady my breathing. That's when I saw it. On the metal surface of the dryer, reflecting the dimly lit room, my own face stared back. But it wasn't quite right. My features seemed to stretch, subtly elongating, my eyes widening into something almost feral. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. The reflection shimmered, then snapped back to normal. Just a trick of the light, I told myself. A distorted surface. A soft scraping sound came from the shelf above the washing machine. I looked up. A small ceramic figurine, a porcelain shepherdess that must have belonged to Elara, slowly, almost imperceptibly, slid across the polished wood. It wasn't a sudden fall, but a deliberate inch-by-inch movement, as if an invisible hand was pushing it. I watched, transfixed, as it reached the edge, teetered for a moment, and then dropped with a sharp clink onto the floor, its head shattering into tiny shards. I jumped, a strangled sound escaping my throat. Only the drone of the machines answered. I knelt, staring at the broken porcelain. There was no draft, no vibration, nothing to explain it. It was as if the house itself had just reached out. The air felt heavy, thick with an unseen presence. Even if it was just to the nearest town, to get a signal, to talk to someone. Anyone. I ran back through the silent halls, the quiet now feeling menacing. The vast entryway seemed to loom, the main door like an impenetrable barrier. I grabbed my car keys from the small table by the door, my hand trembling. I fumbled with the key, jamming it into the ignition of my old SUV. I turned it. Nothing. Just a weak, pathetic click. I tried again and again, the sound growing weaker each time. The battery was dead. Completely, utterly dead. And I knew, with a certainty that froze me to my core, that it hadn't been dead when I arrived. I leaned back against the seat, staring out at the encroaching forest, at the silent, watching manor. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches like skeletal fingers. And then, from the depths of the woods, carried on the damp air, I heard it. A faint, guttural sound, like something large dragging itself through thick undergrowth. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was deeper, older, and it was coming closer. I was trapped. The house had sealed itself around me. And whatever Elara had been tending, whatever had seen her as a host, was now turning its gaze on me. The latch clicking with an unnerving finality. The sound echoed in the sudden silence of the corridor, swallowing the lingering hum of the conservatory's humid air. It wasn't just a word anymore. The evening stretched before me, a long, empty canvas I desperately needed to fill with normalcy. I made myself a simple meal, the clatter of cutlery on porcelain, a small, comforting rebellion against the pervasive quiet. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of the wind against the panes, felt amplified, imbued with a sinister intent. Sleep, when it finally came, offered no escape. I dreamt of the conservatory, but it was no longer a room. It was a colossal breathing organism. The glass panes were its skin, stretched taut and glistening, and the plants within pulsed with an internal green light. Their tendrils, thick as ropes, snaked through the air, their tips quivering, searching. The air was heavy, sweet with decay and something else, something metallic and alive. Her lips, green and stained, moved slowly. You are the root. I woke with a gasp, the taste of damp soil in my mouth, my skin prickling as if something had indeed brushed against it. The dream clung to me through the morning, a vivid, unwelcome guest. I tried to dismiss it, but the house seemed to conspire against me, a phantom scent of that cloying, sweet, bitter perfume, even though I was nowhere near the conservatory. My skin felt unnervingly sensitive, as if the air itself was a rough fabric. It wasn't a desire to explore, but a strange, insistent pull, like a low-frequency hum vibrating deep in my bones. My steps echoed on the flagstone floors of the basement, the air growing cooler, heavier. Cobwebs, thick and laden with dust, brushed against my face, and I swore I could hear faint, wet rustling sounds from within the walls, just beyond the peeling wallpaper. The light struggled to penetrate here, leaving vast pockets of impenetrable gloom. My subconscious seemed to guide me to a utility area, a place I hadn't yet properly explored. 3 industrial-sized washers and dryers stood against one wall, their metal casings scarred with rust, their cycles long since finished. They still hummed, though, a low, persistent vibration that permeated the floor. I ran a hand over the cool, damp metal of a dryer, feeling the faint tremor. It was then I saw it. Tucked into a crevice where the concrete floor met the damp stone wall, a small, vibrant thing. It was no bigger than my thumbnail, a perfect sphere of velvety green. But what truly arrested me was its light. It pulsed with a soft internal luminescence, a delicate emerald glow that waxed and waned, casting a tiny, shifting halo on the grimy floor around it. A spore. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, beautiful and alien in its perfection. A profound, unsettling compulsion bloomed in my chest. I knelt, my fingers trembling, drawn to it with an intensity that verged on obsession. My hand, as if guided by an invisible force, reached out. My fingertips brushed against the velvety surface. It was cool, almost slick, and vibrated faintly, mirroring the hum of the machines. The emerald light seemed to brighten, to pulse faster, as if acknowledging my touch. It wasn't just physical. It was a sensation that seemed to bypass my skin and settle directly into my thoughts, planting a seed of insistent curiosity, a burgeoning hunger. I carefully, almost reverently, picked it up. It rested in my palm, a tiny, glowing jewel, radiating a faint, sweet scent. Not unlike the pervasive perfume of the conservatory, but purer, more concentrated. My grip tightened around the delicate sphere, a fierce, possessive urge washing over me. This wasn't just a spore, and I, Blake, felt an undeniable, horrifying pull towards it. A blurring of the line between my own will and whatever ancient, hungry thing now stirred within Blackwood Manor. The word host still felt like a clammy hand pressed against my chest, even as I pushed away from the heavy oak door. I didn't want to be near the conservatory anymore. I didn't want to be near anything that hummed with that same quiet menace. My mind raced, chasing fragments of Elara's journals. My determination, a brittle thing, held me upright. This wasn't just about Elara anymore, or a fresh start. It was about survival. I made my way back through the labyrinthine passages, not quite sure where I was going, only that I needed a space that felt less alive. I found myself descending a narrow, unlit stairwell I hadn't noticed before, its steps worn smooth by generations of feet. At the bottom, a heavy door painted a faded institutional green stood ajar. Beyond it, a low, steady thrumming filled the air. It was the laundry room with humming machines. A row of industrial-sized washers and dryers stood like silent sentinels, their steel drums gleaming faintly in the single bare bulb hanging overhead. The air was thick with the clean chemical scent of detergent, a welcome antidote to the organic funk upstairs. The rhythmic whirring and churning of a running washing machine, a steady mechanical heartbeat, was strangely comforting. It was a sound of the mundane, a stark contrast to the organic horrors I was beginning to uncover. I needed that grounding. I pulled one of the journals from the stack I'd carried, its leather cover cracked and brittle, the pages within a pale cream. I settled onto a chipped wooden stool, the cold metal frame of a dryer against my back, the hum of the machines a dull roar in my ears. I opened to the next available entry, Elara's looping script filling the page. August 14th. The specimens from the eastern woods are reacting unusually to the nutrient solution. A subtle tremor, almost imperceptible. A response? A hunger? Her early entries were meticulous, detailed botanical observations, notes on soil composition, light exposure. The language was academic, precise, but as I flipped pages, a subtle shift began. The scientific detachment started to fray. September 3rd. The tendrils in the solarium have grown 3 inches overnight. Unheard of. There is a vibrancy to them, a resonance I cannot quantify. They seem aware of my presence. Aware. The word echoed. October 20th. They listen. I know they do. Not with ears, of course, but with something far more ancient. A deep, rooted intelligence. They answer, not in words, but in growth, in movement, in a profound, unsettling stillness. Elara's handwriting grew more erratic, the lines sometimes slanting, the pressure of her pen digging into the paper. The careful scientific language gave way to a feverish, almost poetic tone. November 1st. The manor breathes. I feel it now, a subtle expansion and contraction in the very stone. The roots, they are everywhere. They are the nerves, the veins, and they are hungry, always hungry. Hungry. What did she mean? My gaze flickered to the humming washing machine, its rhythmic sloshing suddenly sounding like a stomach churning. December 12th. The usual feedings are no longer sufficient. They demand more, a deeper connection. I have given them my time, my devotion, my very essence. But it is not enough. They require sustenance, a vessel for their blossoming. I swallowed hard, the word host screaming silently in my head. This wasn't about fertilizer and water. This was something far more sinister. And he had been part of it, willingly or not. January 5th. The old gardener, he understood. He knew the true nature of the manor's heart. He showed me the way, the old ways, the giving. It is a cycle, you see. Life for life. To truly flourish, one must... The old gardener. The one who had vanished without a trace, according to the estate agent. Contribute. The final entries were a terrifying descent into full-blown obsession. The meticulous details of a botanist replaced by the frenzied scrawlings of a devotee. March 2nd. The children of the forest sing through the roots. They are almost ready. The manor will bloom. A new host, strong and vibrant, will allow them to transcend this earthly realm. I have prepared everything. The offering will be made. March 10th. They guide me. They promise such wonders. To be one with the green. To transcend. The host will be chosen. It will be glorious. The last entry was dated just a few weeks before her death. The handwriting was barely legible, a chaotic scrawl that filled the page like tangled vines. March 28th. He's here, the new blood, the perfect vessel. The roots rejoice. The manor stirs. It is time. I am so tired. But the work is done. The cycle continues. Welcome, Blake. Welcome to the garden. My hands trembled, the journal slipping from my grasp and clattering to the concrete floor. The hum of the machines in the laundry room seemed to grow louder, more insistent, no longer comforting but menacing. They weren't just botanical specimens, not just strange growths. They were sentient. They communicated. They hungered. And Elara, in her madness, had believed he was nurturing them, when in fact, he was merely preparing the way. Preparing the manor. Preparing me. The word host wasn't just a label. It was an invitation. And I had accepted. I was here, in the garden. And the manor, with its sprawling, hungry roots, was finally ready to bloom. My hands trembled, the journal slipping from my grasp and clattering to the concrete floor. They were sentient. They felt. The word echoed in the sudden, cavernous space of my mind. sentient, alive, aware. It was a truth that settled over me, cold and heavy, pressing down from the low ceiling of the laundry room. The journal lay open, its brittle pages revealing Elara's frantic, elegant script, detailing observations of the core's awareness, its desire for expansion. My great-aunt wasn't merely tending a garden. He was a keeper, a warden, perhaps even a willing servant. And I, by inheriting this place, had inherited her burden. A shiver, not of cold, but of profound unease, traced its way down my spine. The air in the laundry room, thick with the scent of ozone and damp concrete, suddenly felt charged. I knelt slowly, my knees protesting against the gritty floor, and picked up the journal. My fingers traced the frantic scrawl on the page, then moved to an intricate, almost obsessive sketch on the opposing leaf. It was a crude map, a diagram of this very room, but with an X marked on a section of the floor beneath one of the behemoth industrial dryers. Beneath the wash, the heart beats. That was Elara's terse caption. The dryer in question was an ancient, rusting monstrosity, easily twice my height, its metal shell humming a low, steady thrum that vibrated through the floor. It looked like it hadn't been moved in decades, possibly centuries. I swallowed, the taste in my mouth like dust and fear. Determined, I pushed myself to my feet. If the truth of this place lay beneath that machine, then I had to see it. There was no going back now, not after what I'd read. It groaned, a deep metallic sigh that seemed to resonate with the other machines. I pulled. Nothing. I tried again, straining, my muscles screaming in protest. The dryer scraped forward an inch, then another, leaving a trail of rust and grime on the concrete. The effort was immense, the air filling with the metallic tang of old iron and the faint, sweet scent I'd come to associate with the manor's peculiar flora. With one final desperate heave, the machine lurched, revealing a section of the floor beneath it. It wasn't concrete. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic rhythm against the steady thrum of the machines. I found a recessed metal ring, almost invisible, and tugged. The hatch lifted with a groan of ancient hinges, revealing a gaping black maw. I swung my legs over the edge, testing the first rung. It felt solid, surprisingly resilient. It was a low, resonant pulse, like a vast, slow-beating heart. The air grew heavier, warmer, clinging to my skin. My flashlight beam finally began to catch on things. The rough-hewn stone walls of the passage, slick with condensation, and then a faint greenish glow. It wasn't artificial light. It pulsed. As I reached the bottom, my feet sinking into a layer of soft, damp soil, the sight that greeted me stole the air from my lungs. But the walls, the floor, every surface was alive. Not with light, but with an intricate, sprawling network of roots and fungal growths. The roots weren't merely clinging to the walls. They were the walls, merging seamlessly with the stone, blurring the line between organic and inorganic. I reached out a tentative hand, my fingers brushing against a thick, rope-like root. It was warm, surprisingly soft, almost spongy, and a faint tremor ran through it at my touch. This wasn't just a cellar, not just a hidden space. This was the true heart of Blackwood Manor, and I was standing in its core. I was inside its body, and it was aware of me. The pulsating growths seemed to intensify their glow, and the low thrumming swelled, a hungry, expectant hum that filled the cavern, pressing in on me from all sides. I was no longer merely a visitor. I was something else entirely. I was a new host. They were sentient. They were listening. It wasn't just sound. It was a physical presence, a low, guttural purr that suggested immense hidden power. I stared at the fallen journal, its pages splayed open, revealing Elara's looping script. They require sustenance, a host. A cold dread seeped into me. colder than the concrete beneath my feet. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to dislodge the image of those words, to silence the omnipresent hum. When I opened them, the fluorescent lights above flickered, casting the room in an erratic strobe. Overwhelmed. But the hum intensified, vibrating not just through the floor, but through my very skull. It shifted, gaining a cadence, a rhythm. It began to sound like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate, then faster, urgent. My own pulse began to match it, a frantic drum against my ribs. The air grew thick, heavy, pressing in on me. Salt water. The laundry room with humming machines began to waver at the edges of my vision. The stark white walls bled into a hazy gray, then dissolved entirely. I was no longer standing on concrete. I was on wet sand, the tide pulling at my sneakers. The incessant hum transformed into the roar of the ocean, a hungry, guttural sound that mirrored the one I'd just heard. My stomach lurched. There, just beyond the breaking waves, a small figure stood. A child. Too far to make out details, but the silhouette was unmistakable. No, this wasn't real. This was the manor trying to trick me, to break me. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my palms until the pain was a sharp, grounding anchor. "It's not real," I choked out, my voice hoarse. "It's not real." But the image shimmered, refusing to dissipate. The child on the shore turned, and for a horrifying instant, their face was not human. It was my name, distorted, drawn out, mournful. It crashed down, not on the shore, but directly over the child, engulfing it. The beach was empty. My knees buckled. The laundry room with humming machines was back, clearer now, but stained. The hum had returned to its mechanical drone, but it felt different now, imbued with a new, insidious purpose. My skin prickled. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, more unsettling. A strange warmth began to spread through my limbs, starting at my fingertips and toes, creeping inwards. It wasn't unpleasant, not exactly. It felt welcoming. You always have. I saw the manor then, not with my eyes, but with something else. I saw its roots, deep beneath the earth, intertwining with the bedrock, drawing sustenance from hidden springs. I saw the network of mycelium, a vast living brain, stretching for miles, connected to every tree, every patch of moss, every stone, to become part of the great breathing organism that was Blackwood Manor. No, my mind screamed, even as my body swayed, leaning into the warmth. This was Elara's madness, her legacy. This was the root, reaching for me, trying to claim me. I was Blake. I was here to understand, to fight, not to become another part of its grotesque garden. I forced myself to straighten, to push away from the machine. The hum was still there, a constant, pervasive reminder. It was trying to sing me to sleep, to lull me into its embrace. And for a terrifying moment, I almost let it. The vision of the manor's roots, a vast subterranean brain, still throbbed behind my eyes, a phantom ache. It wasn't just in the earth. It was the earth, or at least a significant, terrifying part of it, and I was seeing through its eyes, feeling its slow, ancient pulse. It was a terrifying intimacy, a parasitic bond I hadn't asked for. This wasn't some distant, abstract threat anymore. The quiet dread that had been my constant companion these past weeks sharpened into a desperate, burning rage. And if the manor was its root system, its brain, then the conservatory, Elara's monstrous garden, had to be its heart. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a fierce, desperate resolve. I needed tools. Something heavy, something sharp. I remembered seeing a small utility shed attached to the back of the main house, near what I thought was the old staff quarters. Perhaps there. The air in the house felt heavier, thicker, as if the very atmosphere resented my sudden burst of defiance. Each step I took down the grand staircase seemed to echo with a strange, wet resonance. not quite an ordinary sound. The old wood groaned, not just under my weight, but with a deeper, more resonant sigh. The faint, sweet, sickly odor of the growths, usually confined to the conservatory, seemed to permeate the entire structure now, a cloying, invasive perfume. I found the door to the utility area, tucked away behind the vast, unused kitchen. The path twisted, unfamiliar despite my previous explorations. Had it always been this way? I pushed the thought down. Focus, Blake. At the end of the passage, a sudden, low thrumming vibrated through the floor. Rows of ancient industrial washers and dryers, their metal bodies scarred with rust, pulsed with a low, rhythmic vibration that made the air itself feel alive. Cobwebs, thick and laden with dust, draped like forgotten shrouds from the ceiling. On a pegboard above a grimy sink, amidst a collection of rusty wrenches and frayed wires, hung a short, heavy axe, its head dull but substantial. Next to it, a sturdy, sharp-edged shovel. Perfect. Or was it just my imagination, amplified by the growing tension? I didn't care. I turned, my path back through the twisted passage feeling even more convoluted. Reaching the conservatory doors felt like traversing a hostile landscape. The massive glass panes, usually reflecting the gloomy sky, now seemed to absorb the light, leaving the interior a murky, verdant gloom. The sweet, sickly scent was overpowering here, laced with something sharper, almost acrid. I pushed open the heavy double doors. The conservatory was a nightmare of green and brown. Tendrils as thick as my arms snaked across the floor, up the walls, and along the ceiling. Some adorned with grotesque, fleshy blossoms that pulsed with a faint internal light. Not today. I raised the axe, its dull edge gleaming faintly, and brought it down with all my might onto a thick, pulsating root that had snaked across my path. The blow was solid, tearing through the fibrous flesh with a wet crunch. The moment the axe connected, the conservatory roared. Not an audible sound, but a deafening pressure in my skull, a wave of pure, primal fury. The tendrils on the walls began to writhe, not subtly, but with a violent whipping motion. Thorns, sharp and black, erupted from their surfaces, extending like sudden barbs. One lashed out, catching my arm, tearing a shallow furrow in my skin. I cried out, more in shock than pain. I hacked again, a desperate frenzy. The shovel, too, became a weapon. I plunged its edge into a clump of bulbous growths that seemed to be the focal point of the chamber, tearing them apart. The sap flowed freely now, coating the floor, making it slick and treacherous. Each cut was met with a surge of pain, not my own, but emanating from the very roots beneath my feet. A shared agony that threatened to overwhelm my senses. The ground beneath me began to shift, not just with roots, but the very flagstones buckled and cracked, as if the earth itself was churning. Become, join, forever. A massive vine-like tendril, thicker than my torso, detached itself from the ceiling with a sickening crack. It swung down with terrifying speed, a living pendulum. I barely managed to dodge, but its blunt force caught my side, sending me sprawling across the slick, sap-covered floor. The axe flew from my grasp, clattering against a broken terracotta pot. Pain flared in my ribs, a sharp, searing agony that stole my breath. Before I could recover, smaller, whip-like tendrils erupted from the floor around me, coiling around my legs, my arms, binding me. They tightened, their thorny surfaces digging into my flesh, drawing blood. I struggled, grunting, my muscles straining, but they were impossibly strong, like steel cables wrapped in living thorns. I was pinned, my back against a crumbling stone plinth, the thorny tendrils digging deeper. My vision blurred, not just from the pain, but from the spores, the suffocating atmosphere, the psychic assault. I was just another branch, another conduit, another host, and I was completely, utterly at its mercy. The struggle was over. I was trapped, and the manor, through its hungry, living heart, had won. The blunt force of the tendril slammed into my side, a wet, sickening impact that stole my breath and sent a jolt of white-hot agony through my ribs. I skidded across the slick, glistening floor, my head striking something hard and unyielding. For a moment, the world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of swirling black and green, a muffled roar echoing in my ears, not from the manor, but from the raw protest of my own body. My vision swam. The axe, a cold, comforting weight moments before, had flown from my grasp, clattering somewhere in the shadowy depths of the hallway. I gasped, trying to pull air into lungs that felt crushed. A sharp, metallic tang filled my mouth. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the haze of pain. The tendril, a living, writhing limb, retracted slowly, its blunt end swaying back and forth. Searching. It moved with a terrible, patient intelligence. My axe. It was my only weapon. But the tendril had already begun to unfurl again, its mass rippling like a grotesque muscle. I couldn't reach it. Not now. Not while this thing was so close. A narrow archway, partially obscured by more of the organic growth, offered a sliver of hope. It led to a deeper, older part of the manor, a section I hadn't yet fully explored. Without thinking, fueled by a primal need for self-preservation, I scrambled on hands and knees, then lurched to my feet, half crawling, half stumbling towards it. The tendril seemed to hesitate, its probing movements slowing, as if the very air in that direction was less palatable to it. Or perhaps it was simply enjoying the hunt. I burst through the archway, my shoulders scraping against rough, damp stone. The air here was different, heavy, humid, and filled with a low, insistent thrum. My eyes adjusted, and I realized I had stumbled into what must have been the manor's laundry room. A series of ancient, industrial-sized machines lined one wall, their metal shells scarred with rust and age. They were all running, their massive drums spinning with a deep, rhythmic hum that vibrated through the very floorboards. The scent of ozone and stale water hung thick in the air, oddly comforting after the cloying sweetness of the sap. The laundry room was a strange oasis. I leaned against a cold stone pillar, catching my breath, my side aching with every ragged inhale. The thrumming of the washers and dryers was so loud, I almost didn't hear the faint scratching from behind a stack of folded, moth-eaten linens on a nearby shelf. Tucked away, half hidden beneath a dusty pile of towels, was a small, leather-bound book. Elara's journal. It felt impossibly heavy in my hands, the leather surprisingly supple despite its age. I flipped it open, my fingers trembling. The pages were brittle, the ink faded, but Elara's familiar, elegant script was unmistakable. This was recent. It has chosen. The hunger grows, an insistent thrum beneath the very earth. I thought I controlled it, nurtured it, but I was merely tending its cradle. My garden, my folly, it needs more. It demands a host, a vessel, a consciousness to guide its true blooming. The ritual is clear, a joining, a communion of flesh and root. My spirit, my will nourish its ascent. I see its glory, its terrible beauty. To become one with the root. To finally understand the true language of life and decay. The cycle. The sacrifice is not an end, but a transformation. A new beginning for us all. My breath hitched. My great-aunt, Elara, wasn't just a victim. She hadn't been consumed against her will. He had welcomed it. He had prepared herself meticulously for this grotesque transformation. The words swam before my eyes, each one a nail hammered into my understanding of Blackwood Manor. The ritual, a joining, a sacrifice. The manor wasn't just a house. It was a living, breathing entity, and Elara had merely been one of its blossoms. Or its gardeners, its willing sacrifice. And now, the journal made it clear, the root demanded another. It demanded me. She wasn't just deluded, he was utterly devoted. She saw beauty in this monstrous exchange, a perverted form of immortality. The choice was stark, agonizing in its simplicity. Succumb, allow myself to be consumed, to become part of this vast subterranean consciousness. Find a way to sever the root, to destroy it, even if it meant tearing down the very foundations of this ancient house. Perhaps myself along with it. The rhythmic hum of the machine seemed to intensify, vibrating not just in my ears, but deep within my chest. It was the root, reaching for me, offering its terrible embrace. I was trapped with an impossible choice, and the manor was watching, waiting, its hunger growing with every beat of my terrified heart. The laundry room with humming machines, a space that had once felt so mundane, now vibrated with a malevolent life. The steady, mechanical whirring of the dryers and the sloshing of the washers were no longer distinct sounds. They had melded into a single droning hum, a bass note beneath the symphony of the manor's awakening. I stood there, paralyzed, my breath catching in my throat. Elara's words, her cryptic notes, they spiraled in my mind. Gardener, blossom. It was the scent of burgeoning life and inevitable rot all at once. My gaze drifted to the machines. The metal casings seemed to ripple, the reflections on their polished surfaces distorting, stretching. And then I saw it, not a trick of the light, but an undeniable reality. From beneath the base of one of the heavy industrial washers, a thin, dark tendril glistening with moisture snaked out. It was too fast, too deliberate to be a stray vine. It quivered, testing the air, then retreated, only to be replaced by another, thicker one, pulsing visibly. My heart didn't just pound, it seized. This wasn't just some strange fungus. This was the root. This was the entity. And it was here, in the nerve center of the house, where the mundane tasks of life were processed, ready to consume. The humming wasn't just the machines. It was the manor's heartbeat, a low, guttural thrumming that was now entirely synchronized with the vibration in my own chest. A cold, clammy sensation spread across the floor. I looked down. They moved, subtly but undeniably. My determination, which had been a flickering ember, suddenly roared into a blaze. I wouldn't be another blossom. I wouldn't be absorbed. I had to get out. I stumbled back, my eyes fixed on the encroaching tendrils. They were thicker now, some of them reaching for the metal legs of the machines, slowly coiling around them. I spun, looking for the door, the escape. It looked almost soft. I pushed against it, but it resisted, feeling strangely heavy, almost elastic. Was it trying to trap me? With a surge of adrenaline, I threw my shoulder against the door. It groaned, a sound that seemed to come from the wood itself, and then, with a sickening squelch, it gave way. I burst through, gasping for air, into the dimly lit hallway. The air here was also thick, but less overtly hostile, more like a heavy blanket. But the manor wasn't done. As I scrambled down the corridor, the floorboards beneath my feet began to creak and groan with an unnatural rhythm, not just the settling of an old house, but a deliberate, almost taunting cadence. I felt a pressure building in my head, a dull ache that resonated with the thrumming in my bones. I could hear it now, clearer than before. It was everywhere, seeping from the walls, rising from the floor, dripping from the ceiling. It was the manor's voice, and it was speaking to me, trying to lull me, to call me back. Home. Rest. Bloom. My great-aunt Elara. She hadn't just been tending a garden. He had been tending it. And it had tended her. That was the horrible truth. She hadn't died a mysterious death. He had been absorbed, her consciousness becoming part of the root, a new gardener, eternally bound. And now it wanted me. Each step was a desperate prayer. Join us forever. I burst through the main entrance, the heavy oak door slamming shut behind me with a resounding thud that vibrated through the very ground. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I sprinted across the overgrown lawn, past the skeletal rose bushes and the gnarled, ancient trees that seemed to writhe in the twilight. I reached the rusted gates, fumbling with the latch, my fingers numb. It gave way with a screech of tortured metal, and I stumbled through, onto the winding gravel road that led away from the estate. I collapsed on the side of the road, gasping, shaking, tears streaming down my face. I was out. I was free. If anything, it felt stronger, deeper. It wasn't an echo of the manor anymore. It was within me. I could feel it, a subtle vibration just beneath my skin, a low, resonant hum that echoed the one I had heard in the laundry room. I pushed myself up, my body screaming in protest. A faint, almost iridescent green seemed to shimmer in their depths. I had escaped Blackwood Manor. But the manor, it seemed, had not finished with me. It had merely extended its roots,